I could go on about this book for hours. That's how intricate and detailed this book is, and that is who I picture as Man with Skull Cup, which is why I want him and Kate to date. I picture him, but with Andy Bierzak's face. If you hear like an engine outside, whether it be a car, a motorcycle, or a boat, just ignore it. That's all I ask you to do, just ignore it, and that's okay. Okay, let's get into it. Well, hello, I'm Erica, I am Odd. It is time for another 6-star read review. For anybody that's new, hi. If you don't know, on my channel, usually when I sit down and do a book review like this, it's because it's either a 5-star or a 6-star. Majority of the time they are 6 stars, but I have done it for a few 5 stars or like a 5-star series. So that is what we will be doing here today on one of my favorite series, which is the How to Survive Camping series. In previous videos, I know in my October reads videos, and I know in my most recent top 5 spooky reads video, I have talked about the first book in this collection, which is How to Survive Camping, The Man with No Shadow. I do have this in my fall and Halloween section as opposed to my scary one because these are kind of comforting to me, even though they are like really scary. I mean, at least this one was. The first half of this was so scary. This still goes in my Halloween reads and my fall reads because I found this in the fall. I read it during the fall. It got me through a breakup, if I'm being honest. So that is why it goes in the fall series. It's a bit of a comfort read for me. So that is the first book. I didn't do a video on that first book. I can. This like 5-star, 6-star review thing, relatively new for my channel, but I am enjoying it. You guys seem to be enjoying it, so I want to keep doing it for books I feel really compelled to kind of deep dive and theorize and just like have an open stream of consciousness about. So that is what we'll be doing today for the second book, How to Survive Camping, The Lady in Chains. Look at how gorgeous. I love the artwork on it too. And that's where she shall remain for the review. So, for those of you that don't know, each book starts with a list of rules. Kate makes these rules in order to help the campers essentially survive her campground. She is on what is called old land. Her family for generations has been taking care of this land, and the humanoid mythological beasts and creatures and entities, you name it, they have been taking care of this land and saving the people from essentially these beings. That is the premise of the books. Is we follow Kate as she works as the campground manager for this campsite. She does it just like her parents before her did, and their parents before them did, and her aunt and uncle are there to help her out. She has her brother that's there to help her out. And we essentially see this contrast between her protecting the campers from these creatures and a town that is basically reluctant to the fact that they do depend on Kate and her family to keep them safe. All of that can be wrapped up in the first book. So many mythical creatures. The list goes on and on. It hits you with a lot of different lore. Very much like the Appalachian Mountains type. I'm saying it wrong. I know. I'm sorry. I don't know the right way. It's kind of like bag or bag. It depends on where you are. I've heard it so many different ways. By the way, it's bag. Anyways, I'm glad we cleared that up. In the first book, there are Irish sirens. There are sort of these side creatures of like, there's a giant cat at Christmas that if you don't get close for Christmas, is gonna eat you. Like, Santa Claus comes and saves her. But then we also have our core sort of entities, beings, if you will, which are the lady with extra eyes. For the previous book, The Man with No Shadow. He is not featured in this book. Man with Skull Cup. Even though we really didn't see them in this book, the Children with No Wagon, I think they're called. Yeah, the children selling ice with no wagon or something like that. Like, they all have these very specific sort of identifiers that when you look at them, it's just kind of describing what they see. And in this book, it's also a case of, hey, if there's frost at your tent, call me, stay exactly where you are, don't touch it, don't try and venture out. And these lists of rules at the beginning of the book usually pertain to the main story that we're about to read. So like this book had new rules that the other ones didn't have. But then some of them are like, hey, in heavy rains, I recommend having a more durable tent, you know, less likely to get hurt. And also make sure you put out your campfires, even simmering coals. And it's like basic camp stuff. So it feels very real in that way. Just a quick synopsis, right? Before I get into my thoughts, because I do have thoughts. We're introduced again to Man with Skull Cup. I love him. I'll get into it. But we see her interact with Man with Skull Cup. There is this mysterious frost that keeps popping up around the sort of campsite and a being that comes with it, as well as the dancers from the previous book. We have the harvesters. I think they were in the previous book. If not, They're a big part of this. And what happens in this book essentially is that a bunch of these harvesters start to kind of go missing one by one. Once the lady with extra eyes goes missing, Kate starts to work with the harvesters and the man with skull cup to try and figure out what is happening to everybody. Why is lady with extra eyes changing? As the book goes on, we learn that the lady in chains is actually the lady with extra eyes who has a curse placed upon her. And the reason that this bad year, as they call it on the campgrounds, has been happening is because the land is turning from old land to ancient land. And you'll obviously learn more about the plotline as I talk about my favorite parts, but essentially where we leave this book is that Kate is faced with the fact that the land is becoming ancient. So unlike the first book, we didn't see a full year in this book. We only saw summer. We only saw a few months. Oh my god, my candle almost fell. Let's get into my favorite parts. Shall we? My favorite characters, the tea that I love. So like the book started off like any other. I read the rules. I noticed that there were some new rules. However, it did begin the way the first one did, which I appreciated, which was with Man with Skull Cup. How people picture him, like scary, is not how I picture him. She described him as a guy with a bunch of like piercings and rings and sort of like a punk goth look to him, though nobody sees him the exact same as another person would. Like how Kate sees him isn't how everybody sees him, I guess. How I see him. Because I don't know if y'all know this about me. I'm a little emo, just a little. No, I was super into that music in high school and I still am. I am an elder emo, if you will. I don't dress like it. I don't look like it. I don't care. I like what I like. And how I picture Man with Skull Cup is, stay with me. Do you remember in that movie Eurotrip? I haven't even seen the movie Eurotrip. I just know that this is the scene that it's from because I've seen the scene where it's Matt Damon as a lead singer and he has like a shaved head and a bunch of like piercings and he's singing Scotty Doesn't Know. I picture him but with Andy Bierzak's face and he's kind of like slender like Andy Bierzak, and that is who I picture as Man with Skull Cup, which is why I want him and Kate to date. And what I liked is that in this book we acknowledged that. That was one of my favorite parts of this book. I'm gonna start here because I've been waiting. I like that we acknowledge that him and Kate have chemistry. The camp staff make fun of the fact that like, oh yeah, it's your little like demon boyfriend. One of the humanoid creatures is like, oh yes, he'll make a fine husband as long as he like doesn't take you out, you know, or like break a deal or something. In this entire book we see him really show up for Kate and we see him save her from the lady in chains several times. He essentially draws a line in the sand with himself and the other creatures within the woods of saying, I stand with Kate, I will protect Kate. A means to whatever end, she's staying alive. And this is whose side I'm on, which is a huge deal for the campgrounds. And we see sort of like a different side of Man with Skull Cup. Not necessarily a softer side because let's keep in mind he is still a humanoid creature, right? Like he's still like a monster creature within the book. So there are certain rituals, there are certain rules that all of these creatures and monsters partake in that each side needs to mutually respect for any form of coexistence. And a big part of his ritual is that if people reject from drinking from his cup, something bad happens to them. So Kate has always said, hey, if he offers this to you, say yes. You take a drink. Just don't eat or drink anything for 24 hours and you'll be fine, usually. We learn more in this book that that cup has more power against other monsters. In order to stop them, these monsters that seem impervious to any sort of like human means of defense, he is able to splash them with whatever liquid is in this cup and is able to be used in defense of Kate. So there's a big turning point in this book where it's discovered that the lady with extra eyes is a lady in chains, and it's a curse that once the campground manager, or like the person in charge of the land before it was a campground, I guess, once they become so indifferent towards the land, or they become so indifferent towards humankind for not listening to them, the lady in chains awakens in order to take care of that problem. And so essentially once Kate breaks the curse, the lady with extra eyes reappears in her cabin. It's no longer cold, chilly, with just spiders everywhere. She is having tea with Kate and simply explains this is becoming ancient land and one of the creatures has to rule it once it becomes ancient land, because ancient things will come and it will become more dangerous to the point where like humans and the town will be affected. And she, as she's having tea with Kate, it's explained that all of the spiders around town that have been possessing like the local grocer and have been tormenting people, putting them under sort of a spell, are actually from her, which does make sense because like she's the lady with extra eyes, right? Well, like, where did we think those eyes came from? She's a spider. As Kate is having all of this sort of revealed to her, she's given peppermint tea by the lady, and she slowly begins to realize that she has been poisoned. As this chase ensues through the forest, Man with Skull Cup appears, saves Kate, and then something interesting happens. They both go to the hospital, and all of the doctors and nurses see him as the same thing, as a human, even though he's not. He's human enough for these doctors to sort of treat him, and he's essentially sent into a coma because during the last battle, the skull is broken. He is in sort of this powerless state, right? And the rest of this book essentially is her realizing that she is running out of time. In order to save the campground, she does have to eliminate the lady with extra eyes, which does hurt because her and her brother grew up with her. They trusted her. This deals with a lot of betrayal, this book. And I liked that we sort of saw the depth of these creatures. You know, in the first book, they're just scary creatures. And we hear about their powers and the control they have over people and what they do to the humans and how they interfere with the ongoings of the campground. But what we don't hear about is sort of these deep relationships that Kate's family formed with some of them and formed with the lady with extra eyes, and how her grandparents and her other aunts and uncles have all succumbed to the fate of this ground, which for Kate's family, the curse is that they will be taken by a creature there. Eventually, that's how they all meet their demise. And this book really jumped into the depth of that. Of the first one's fun, spooky, scary campfire, and this one is too, but it deals with more of the depth of the reality of if this was happening and somebody was having to take care of a campground like that, what would you do? I mean, how do you deal with the fact that Kate has been seeing the lady with extra eyes pretty much her entire life, and she's always been so kind to Kate and always had tea with her and offered her advice and just lent a friendly ear, all for her to be evil and to be the thing that is now tormenting the campground? How does Kate have to reconcile with that? And it showed a lot of growth on Kate's behalf, that she started to not detest the land as much, and I think she sort of really accepted who she talks about acceptance in the first book, but in this book I feel she really accepts the fact that, okay, this is my family's curse. This is what I have to endure. And a way that is conveyed throughout the book is kind of through the Man with Skull Cup coming and defending her not knowing who to trust, where to go, because Man with Skull Cup before this wasn't a very trustworthy person. In this one, he's really come to bat to her. How far is she willing to go to take care of this land? What is it willing to cost her? Is it willing to cost her monstrous creature that is suddenly helping her? Will it cost her her friend, the old sheriff? Will it cost her the local townspeople that depend on her? It is all sort of starting to culminate to what the pinnacle of this book series will be. I really felt it in this book. And towards the end, once she defeats the lady with extra eyes, she does sort of figure out what she has to do in order to appease the land and appease the creatures more as it does start to turn to ancient land. And one thing we learn in this great fight between Man with Skull Cup and the lady with extra eyes is that they don't have names. It's a big point of contention for these creatures on the land for some reason. And so Kate decides, all right, Man with Skull Cup needs a new skull, so I will do the ritual with the head of the lady with extra eyes. And so to thank him for all of this, I'll give him a name. The camp staff and the members of SWORD, which is essentially like a LARPing group that is the main event for the humans on this campground in this book. I think a few members of SWORD did put names into the suggestion box. And so once she completes the ritual for the skull cup to wake up, she essentially says, hey, here's your new cup. Your name is Bo. And I think that that's hilarious, because it's even pointed out in the book, every single staff member was like, that is your boyfriend. That's your boyfriend. He likes you. You can't deny it. And she can't. And I can't explain it. The growth through him and Kate's personal growth on their own, let alone as a team, not even as like a romantic couple at all, but just as a team to defend themselves against the campground and to protect the campground. The character growth in this book was so satisfying to see, because it felt like both characters really matured, even the ones been around for like hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe thousands, who knows. Their maturity and their ability to work together and to care about the grounds for whatever motivation it may be for either one of them was like kind of the heart of this book. And the heart of this book is essentially just a maturing within Kate and Bo. I'll call him Bo from now on. And it is sort of a method of Bo realizing how much Kate does care about this campground and how badly she wants to keep it safe and keep it from turning to ancient ground. It's also about Kate reaching this sort of level of maturity and acceptance of what her role is. And she's always accepted the fact that, like, yes, this is very cut and dry. This is what happens to us on this campground. This land has claimed all the generations before me. It'll claim me. But she's sort of accepted the fact that doesn't necessarily have to be soon. And it doesn't necessarily have to be before she does something to better the campground. I could go on about this book for hours. That's how intricate and detailed this book is, but I wanted to talk just mostly about those main parts of the fact that this book is a 6-star read for me because of the character growth, because we got to see the depth of the characters more and the depth of the monsters more. She gave depth to monsters. The book just reached a level of depth that I was definitely hoping it was going to reach, but I was nervous that maybe I was looking too far into it. Maybe it was just going to stay kind of like a spooky campfire story. There's definitely way more emotion in this depth. What it is to be human is sort of asked in this book, as opposed to the first one. It was very cut and dry, black and white. This one has literal gray areas. There's a gray dimension. Read the book. It has this sort of gray area of who does get to make these decisions on this land. This land that, yes, belongs to her family, but doesn't really belong to any of them at all. And then you are left on this cliffhanger of, okay, what's going to happen if this turns to ancient ground? What's going to happen to all the creatures? What's going to happen to Kate, the campers, everybody? And it definitely set itself up for the next book very nicely. I wasn't like dissatisfied at how this ended. Wish we saw a little bit more of Beau at the end, but nevertheless, I'm sure we'll see more of him. And what I thought was very sweet too is that instead of viewing all things as bad, Kate sort of warms up to this idea that they do all have a gray area, like I was talking about. I mean, at the end, she changes her rule to don't mind the spiders, they tend to the trees, because the trees are actually victims of this campground that were given a second life by the lady with extra eyes before she passed. So it's all very intricate, and I highly recommend this book. The depth of this book, what it is to be human, what is life, who decides what is good and what is bad, and really enjoyed the depth that this book got to, which is why it is a 6-star for me. I can't recommend it enough. With that being said, that is it for today's video. I hope that you guys will check out this book series. It's so fun, and it's like the perfect time of year. Summer, camping, spooky summerween vibes. But that is it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what you're reading lately, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.